Yet again, Attack on Titan took the world by storm. Every single episode of Season 4 Part 2 demanded attention, entertaining and blowing away viewers with a story that keeps on surpassing bars it itself established. That's not hyperbolic either. The first part of Attack on Titan's final season was already recognized by accredited boards as the most in-demand show in the world. This subsequent entry continued this trend, with it being at one time 52 times more popular than the average show in the United States. Of course, popularity doesn't mean proven quality, but it does suggest something must be going well to attract this many eyeballs. And what helps paint that picture, but still should never make up your mind on its own, is the many review sites, particularly IMDb, who yet again saw multiple perfect 10s awarded to the anime. So why? Why again has Attack on Titan been able to put out another amazing entry? Well, because a near decade worth of complex storylines and arcs are coming to satisfying conclusion. The storytelling of this season has done a brilliant job at contextualizing the narrative for those who'd yet come to the conclusion some others had, essentially meaning whatever's been unfolding as of late, no matter how crazy it seems, was something that was always brewing, in particular Eren Yeager. On the surface, it certainly seems he has taken a darker turn, one of brutal violence coupled with an unwavering philosophy, and whilst he was not exactly like this previously, this capacity for devastation was always there since birth. At the mere age of 10, he not only murders but justifies it by redefining how human that person is. The show in this part retreads that exact incident, which isn't the first time it's highlighted in the story. Remember the public being shocked in the court, his father concerned by his actions, or even himself referring to the incident. This moment is a small fragment into the flawed mind of Eren Yeager. As a result, all over this story, at every avenue, we see characters in the world shaken, acknowledging how odd and frightening he can be, from naive, twisted belief systems and out-of-place determination. As this season shows, that's exactly what he became, but to no fault of his own. I say that because there was another side to him, one that was shown to be happier with the people he loves. This is epitomized in Dawn of Humanity, one of the greatest episodes of television. The duality of Eren from love to hate is powerful messaging that pulls on the heartstrings. What has felt like an eternity of darkness in the story is temporarily lifted when Eren and his friends enjoy each other's company. However, reality soon hits. The world is what it is. It can be beautiful, and Eren can be happy, but humans have made it cruel, have made Eren lean into his flaws. Therefore, the ultimate representation of humanity's failures is encapsulated with what he has become in this part of the final season. At the same time, this development now contextualizes elements of the story very differently. Do you remember Mikasa telling the audience how Eren's emergence was seen as a manifestation of humanity's rage? This was the moment where a sense of hope was planted in the story, as maybe this would be the solution to save the world. However, with the aforementioned developments, especially of Season 4 Part 2, this is no longer the case, since it now can be interpreted as a sense of warning. Eren is definitely the manifestation of this world, humanity's rage and struggles, but not in the way we could have imagined back then. Furthermore, what's also so amazing about this part is the time it gives to wrap up other character arcs. What helps to make Attack on Titan's personalities feel far more vivid than even the best live-action shows is the simple idea of memories, how they mold who we become and govern our actions. All characters throughout the story have followed this principle, but in this part, it was prevalent more than ever, to the point I could dub this season as reflection. Jean, who may be the MVP of this part, is constantly evaluating his sins, his memories of previous friends, and his experiences of conflict. When speaking to Ayongapon about why he saved him, he delivers a powerful message that his dead comrades would not rest easy with him just sitting idly by. And even as Hanji cries for a call to action against Eren, Jean is hit by the image of Marco, the reason why he took his plunge into the Scouts. He simply won't or cannot let these people's sacrifices mean nothing. He has to at least try. Also, these moments of characterization through memories can happen in mere seconds. When all that battle was commencing between the young Yeagerists and the scouts, we followed the entire story, we witnessed how ruthless our characters can be. After all, they've had an entire season dedicated to the idea of killing another human being, not hesitating in the field of battle. Yet, the young Yeagerists freak out in the heat of the moment, which is an even greater bittersweet moment than the fact that friends are killing friends. It simply suggests they had no clue as to how they truly felt, until it was too late. This all comes full circle to the bleakness of which violence is portrayed in this story. It is never glorified. Yeagerist, extreme or not, are portrayed as young individuals who simply got swept up by nationalistic sentiment, not fully aware of what they got themselves involved in. The show thankfully ensures to make it as ugly as possible, emphasizing that we should feel no sense of pride in what has been done. In fact, Annie said it best at the end of the episode, and based on reactions amongst the community, the message hit home. Of course, violence is an idea many stories and various art forms have explored, but this is one of the very few times where it successfully transferred the feelings of those in the world to me, the audience. So much so that, similar to herself, many of us are just so sick and tired of the violence. We all just want it to end. In the heat of the moment, it may be epic and cool to look at, but it always ends up feeling extremely uncomfortable. And that's exactly what our characters feel, but more significantly, was the aim of the show that some seem to miss. These people are those who decide to pick sides without logically considering the other. It's essentially fanboy stan culture manifested in a show where it has no place to be. On one side, I see Floch fanboys practice the art of whataboutism. If Mikasa murders her former comrades, it is brought up by those who support the Yeagerist and Floch to suggest how wrong she and her group is. Specifically, they say they're hypocrites, as they're willing to kill them but not everyone in the world who hates paradise. However, Mikasa and co do not see the world in one broad stroke. Eren's actions puts in danger many innocent people who they, unlike the Yeagerist, have met. And putting that to the side, everyone innately knows the difference between what is right and wrong. Earlier scenarios when they've committed morally questionable acts is usually when they're up against people who are not exactly innocent. However, it's important to acknowledge it's not just Floch fanboys, as on the other side, you have the stands of the Alliance. These people's problems is that they cannot simply sympathize or understand the Yeagerists. While I criticize Floch fanboys, he himself had one of the most hyped moments this season, which recalls how well he has been developed. In the beginning, he was the scared coward, a far call from a hero, but also someone who believed humanity needed people like Eren, someone willing to become a devil. This explains why now, instead of back then, he is so behind Eren, because he now embraces that role. As a result, in both parts of the final season, he has become an astute commander that has something to believe and die for. No matter if you think he is an extremist, there is a level of respect that has to be granted his way. Before, he would cower at the sight of shrapnel tearing his people apart. Now he is the one urging his soldiers to fight on the front lines, practically staring death in the face to save his homeland. This story does justice by giving weight to his perspective. Attack on Titan likes to show each side of the coin, as everyone in this battle has their reasons, which is why we often find ourselves so morally conflicted. Therefore, the problem with these two sets of people is that, as just mentioned, the story gives weight to each motivation. This is not a generic simplistic anime where you can just take sides. More so, we are seeing a detailed nihilistic commentary about many themes, falling under the umbrella of humanity. Whether that be war, freedom, cruelty, fate, betrayal, love, regret, corruption, truth, and so on. The story does it all. It covers them all with nuance. The journey of this story, the many lessons we've learned from it, are more important than any destination. This is why for me personally, if I was to pick a side, I would disagree with the Yeagerists a bit more, but I still understand them. Yet a violent push towards genocidal logic in the hope to rid the cruel world of its problems that partly stem from a cycle of violence is not only disgusting, but illogical thinking that goes against every grain of this story. But let's move on, because the writing of Grisha Yeager has been nothing short of a masterpiece. The revelations delivered in this part broke the internet as well as previously conceived ideas. The perspective of Zeke had affected the way we saw Grisha. We no longer viewed him as morally good as before. Instead, he came across as a manipulative father who only seemed to care about his mission to retrieve the founder, to the point he massacred an entire family. Now to learn in the phenomenal episode Memories of the Future that not only did he feel intense remorse for treating Zeke as a pawn, but he himself was pushed against his will to kill the royal family by his own son, Eren. It's tragic. Painful to witness, and the Japanese voice actor elevates this to become the iconic scene it was in the manga. Hiroshi Toshida deserves an award, or something. His harrowing mental breakdown, heard in his voice dancing along with the crescendo the music reaches, is utter heartbreaking. Nevertheless, this part has also done a huge push in finalizing Reiner's arc. We know from detailed flashbacks that he dreamed of becoming a hero for his people. However, both of these parts show he feels anything but that, and is overwhelmed with feelings of regret. One of the main drivers for this is undoubtedly the fact that those who he called friends inside the walls became exactly that, but now they justifiably label him a traitor. Brilliantly, this season revisits this story beat, by plunging those former comrades into a situation where they have to portray their own friends. It creates a full circle, illustrating how easily someone can get lost in committing such heinous actions. The lines are blurred. One of the main people at the end of this is Connie, who also happens to be one of the other MVPs of this part. For those who have not read the manga, I actually found his part to be handled far better in the anime. This is thanks to the help of simple voice acting, cinematography, and music combining to elevate the ideas of his development. I remember the story beat of him feeling betrayed appearing in the manga, but it felt quite fleeting. Yet here, it's substantial and really resonates as you feel the pain and torment it's put on him. This only gets worse for him as part 2 goes on, as he ends up killing his 2 former friends, one of which his other half saved. The directors didn't need to, but they excellently call back to Bertolt's emotional outburst about how someone in this world must soil their hands. If the full circle wasn't clear enough, well, it was just complete. This is excellent writing that ties up loose ends and finalizes character arcs in a neat bow. Speaking of which, Keith Shudders may have got the most deluxe treatment of all this season. This is something that Attack on Titan executes flawlessly, seamlessly reintroducing characters into the story. As a result, Shudders' arc now sticks out quite profoundly, a lost hero in the world dubbed to be so cruel. And that's exactly what it was to him, a man who dreamed just like Eren at one point to be the special hero that would save humanity, or at least contribute something important. And only when he lost everything to the world due to his sense of duty did he give up. But in this story, Isayama did not. The reintroduction of him to become exactly what he wished for was satisfyingly bittersweet. This is because we, the audience, were happy to see him finally become the hero of the day by becoming the champion of principles to the former Yeagerists, but also saddened by the idea that his name and actions would possibly just die here at the port. The other character who experiences one of the most integral developments is Mikasa. We see her doubt Eren more than ever, to the point she considers the idea we've become all familiar with. Was she and us ignoring the frightening falls of Eren? Obviously, since the beginning, she has been the one to follow him no matter what, willing to cut down anyone regardless of their position in order to protect the man she loves. And the story does a fantastic job at capturing her feelings, whether that be the characters reciting the fact or her pretty much confessing it. These factors, alongside others, have led to people saying she is dependent and overprotective of Eren, arguably all stemming from her traumatic childhood experience where everything in the world was taken from her, but then given back in a moment of hope and beauty. This moment here is such a powerful one that it has long been a fan favourite in the story. Thankfully, this part gives it its time, having it cut the way it was with Eren's focus no longer on Zeke but to him and Mikasa makes it very clear that this memory of him and Mikasa is special to him. However, if she ever believed Eren loved her, that was thrown a span in the works when he said he hated her. Also bear in mind that in Season 4, she has seen Eren cause nothing but devastation, wreaking havoc in Mali, which led to the death of Sasha. She is now witnessing Eren take the lives of innocent people outside the walls, man, woman and child. Understandably, as mentioned before, this causes her to question Eren more than ever. Mikasa for a long time has been shackled by her feelings of Eren, potentially paralysing her to act against him. Notably, characters in both parts of the final season have questioned her commitment to him, When will she draw the line, and where will she? Now, it just feels like we have reached that breaking point by her body language, and she even somewhat confesses it. But just as Annie said, will she be able to stay true to her words? Truth be said, to the casual, we've had an entire season dedicated to the idea of her being able to act against Eren. But in actuality, this entire story has overseen that development, and it will undoubtedly play a big part. Another interesting aspect of Mikasa this season is one that many seem to miss, that being her intense regret about her previous actions. Her service to the military has fed into a nationalistic cycle she cannot stand. This is worsened with the fact her bravery and strength is used against her with Louise. She is the living example of Mikasa's failures. She believes blindly in the military and follows Eren without question. The latter builds upon her frustration towards Louise, as Mikasa believes, or at least has for a long time in this story, that her commitment to Eren was something of beauty and love. Louise, on the other hand, is committed for all the wrong reasons. It's a real slap in the face for everything Mikasa has done and stood for. Regardless of story beats and character arcs, the production of this part was also very interesting. This release was far better than MAPPA's first, which was already impressive to say the least. CG models are clean and rigged with smoother animations. We also got plenty of kinetic ODM sequences, recalling some of the best moments under Wit's line. In particular, the retrospective episode has such high levels of animation throughout that it's one of the best produced episodes of the entire series, and has arguably the best sequence in Attack on Titan. However, I want to point out some problematic commentary. We all know the ridiculous overblown CGI controversy of MAPPA's first part of the final season. There was no problem with anything else, and in fact, the writing in many cases reached its peak at that moment in time. Yet, some decided to throw a fit over not getting drawn Titans, which I agree are visually more appealing than CGI ones. But I also know and can acknowledge that these models were pretty darn good. Thankfully, most big critics within the community banded together to point out how ridiculous these nitpicks were, as like I said, they weren't even bad, and the show itself was still, in words that many people like to use, putting out peak content every episode. With time, you'd hope that these childish critiques would wash away, but they've just come back in their most ignorant form yet. This new part's production is even better than the first, and CG models are handled really well to the point that even the most ardent of critics would look ridiculous. And so instead, they have latched onto the idea of what could have been as a form of criticism. This is the most unfair of all because it's purely hypothetical. This is because some fans still insist on comparing and theorizing how Wit's production would have fared. We all know these people. Their favourite thing to do is to brandish images in Wit's art style, noting that their animation would also be top tier. And these ideas put forward are not necessarily wrong, but that is also why I disagree that Wit's style would have been the best thing for this conclusion of the story. Possibly a hot take, but hear me out. At the end of their production, specifically the final episode, all the underlying themes and darker secrets were brought to the surface in the most perfect bittersweet moment at the sea. When Armin dropped the shell and Eren uttered those words, we were essentially waving goodbye to previously conceived ideas of hope, submitting to the reality of the world, the cruel world that was filled with far more complex ideas. This means that when the story picked up next, which would be with a time skip, we would be thrown into these new darker realities. Unfortunately, Wit's traditional art style does not align with this messaging, but MAPPA's choice of drearier colours, darker ones as well as that, and detailed realistic drawings does in fact synergize. The aesthetic of the show and its narrative arc is in sync with MAPPA. Of course, Wit could have changed their art style, but that would have thrown the point of these what could have beens out of the window. Let's also not forget that MAPPA, at least for me, have offered far better framed episodes. Which is no slight to Wit, as theirs are industry leading. But frame to frame, Attack on Titan now feels far more cinematic than ever before. It perfectly captures the bleak tone of these arcs. MAPPA doesn't hesitate to make us feel uncomfortable at the violence our supposed heroes commit. Them taking control of Attack on Titan's final season was actually a blessing in disguise and was the 1 in a million chance where a studio change was actually more beneficial than a hindrance. The story at the time of the studio change needed a different approach, whilst also remaining familiar due to the narrative's tonal shift. Wit's run was perfect and elevated the source material of Attack on Titan many times. And guess what? MAPPA's run is equally as perfect, if not more so, for yes, different reasons, as Attack on Titan became an entirely different beast by the time Wit finished and MAPPA began. Ultimately, to round this review up, the The final season, part 2 of Attack on Titan, is incredible. On every level, Studio MAPPA surpassed its previous outing, which was already impressive. They have truly delivered with this pivotal part of the story, unquestionably consolidating Attack on Titan as the era-defining anime and show of our generation. This story keeps on breaking records, and it will go down in history as one of, if not the greatest of all time.